The story kicks off with Hal introducing LouAnne Johnson to Carla, the assistant principal of Parkmount High, as an applicant for a teaching role. Initially, Carla doesn't want to meet with her, but she changes her mind and reviews LouAnne's CV. Despite learning that LouAnne isn't certified to teach, Carla decides to hire her. She explains that she needs LouAnne to step in and fill a vacancy left by one of their academy teachers, Mrs. Shepard.
One of our academy teachers, Mrs. Shepard, left, and
apparently, since Mrs. Shepard's departure, the school relied on several substitute teachers, and the most recent one called in sick that morning. LouAnne checks in with Carla once more to ensure everything is on track, especially since she came in expecting a student-teacher interview. She asks Carla about the responsibilities of an academy teacher. Carla explains that the role involves teaching special, energetic kids. When LouAnne hears about the salary, she's instantly drawn to the numbers and gladly accepts the offer.
Yes, I'm interested.
oh, that's wonderful.
Carla hands her the curriculum and schedule before leading her out of the office. When Hal enters, he congratulates LouAnne, but becomes concerned upon learning she'll be taking over Mrs. Shepard's former class. He asks if she's been fully briefed, but the enthusiastic LouAnne reassures him that she'll reach out if she has any questions. As they leave the office, Hal takes her to her new classroom, which is located near his. Peering through the door, she notices the students are quite noisy, but Hal assures her they'll settle down once they see her standing quietly. Just before heading to his own class, he advises her not to raise her voice at them and reminds her that he's right next door if she needs him. The bell rings, and LouAnne steps into the classroom, only to find the students acting carefree and ignoring her presence because she's flat. Those who do notice her quickly dub her white bread. After a few silent seconds of waiting for their behavior to change, LouAnne raises her voice, demanding their attention, but they continue to ignore her. Frustrated, she asks one student what happened to Mrs. Shepard. The student promptly stands up and calls for the class's attention, casually mentioning that white bread wants to know about their former teacher. Unified, the classmates start throwing insults at her, claiming they sent Mrs. Shepard packing. Emilio approaches LouAnne and declares that he fed Mrs. Shepard to his dogs because she was too ugly to eat, but that he'd prefer to eat LouAnne instead. The class rallies behind him, cheering, but LouAnne, determined to regain control, asks for Emilio's name and writes it on the board. This only fuels their ego as they chant his name loudly, distracting Hal's class next door. Unable to tolerate their behavior any longer, LouAnne swallows her anger and walks out into the hallway, where she calls for Hal's attention. He steps out to meet her, and she asks what happened to Mrs. Shepard. Hal explains that Mrs. Shepard was a high-strung teacher who left before having a breakdown. Sadly, another substitute had also broken down because of the students, and it seemed to be their way of driving out teachers. Frustrated, LouAnne asks what kind of kids she's been assigned to teach, and Hal describes them as bright students, but lacking educational fundamentals and burdened with social issues. Annoyed, she scolds him for not giving her a heads up, but he reminds her that she said she wanted to teach. LouAnne immediately replies that she can't handle them, but Hal encourages her, suggesting that all she needs to do is capture their attention. Otherwise, she might as well quit. He heads back to his classroom, leaving LouAnne to ponder her next move in managing her challenging students. Later at home, LouAnne researches how to manage the kids, and after some careful thought, she decides to take a tough love approach. The next day at school, she dresses like a gangster, and when her students walk into the classroom, they're shocked to see she's still showing up. Once everyone settles down, LouAnne writes on the board that she's a U.S. Marine and asks if anyone knows martial arts. The students are surprised to learn about her Marine background. When Emilio offers to spar, she politely declines, explaining that she can't touch a student. He rudely brushes off the opportunity to join her on stage. Unfazed, she points to two students, Darrell and Raoul, who confidently step forward. eager to showcase their skills. However, as they start mimicking moves they've seen on kids' shows, she stops them, telling them they don't know what they're doing. One student tries to test her by attempting to surprise her, curious if Marines can really take someone down with just their hands. In response, she instinctively adopts a defensive stance, impressing the class. She then calms them down and demonstrates a hip throw with Raul, which wins their approval and finally grabs their attention. With the class now engaged, she calls them inductees,
Each one of you is like an inductee.
announcing that they will all begin the semester with an A, but it's up to them to keep that grade through to the end. The next day, LouAnne enters the classroom to find her students eager for more karate lessons. However, she disappoints them by announcing that they'll be learning verb conjugation instead. Their enthusiasm quickly fades, and they start acting as if she isn't there.
Today we are going to conjugate some verbs.
Hey, what about karate?
LouAnne writes a sentence on the board, but when she sees that the students aren't paying attention, she decides to change it to something darker. She asks them to pick a verb that fits the sentence. The students struggle with the task, but one of them, Callie, manages to choose the correct verb, choose. Afterward, Callie makes a strong argument about the concept of choice and hands LouAnne a book titled My Darling, My Hamburger.
In our class, we're reading this book called My Darling, My Hamburger.
The class continues, but soon Carla enters and informs LouAnne that Principal Grandet would like to see her. Upon hearing this, the students immediately start chanting that LouAnne is in trouble. After the period ends, LouAnne heads to Grandet's office. When she enters, he tells her to knock next time before coming in. LouAnne apologizes, and Grandet explains that it's against school policy for her to teach karate to the students. He insists she must stick to the school curriculum. In her defense, LouAnne argues that her students' brains are on Do Not Disturb, and they don't even understand what a verb is. But Carla points out that the example sentence LouAnne wrote on the board was inappropriate. LouAnne agrees, explaining that she needed to capture their attention and that it was still better than the boring book assigned to them. Grandet looks at the book and reminds her that it's part of the approved curriculum for the class. He insists that she stick to school policies, even if she disagrees with them. After class, LouAnne meets Hal, who is marking his students' work. He encourages her not to let the school get to her, and she assures him that she won't let it affect her. However, she mentions she's planning to challenge the entire curriculum, but she can't find any paper in the Xerox room. Hal tells her that there isn't any paper, and the school is short on materials. The next day, Hal jokingly asks LouAnne if she plans to teach a little kickboxing or target practice, but she shows him her secret weapon hidden in her bag, which makes him burst out laughing. In class, she has almost all the students identify the parts of speech in a sentence written on the board, and she rewards those who get it right with candy bars. The students are excited, and LouAnne tells them that soon they'll be ready for poetry. Intrigued, they ask how that connects to what they're doing, and she explains that if they can read poetry, they can tackle anything, even a bear. The students seem interested, but she dampens their mood slightly by handing out poem assignments. To motivate them, she promises to take them to an amusement park if they complete the work. They ask who will pay for the trip, and she jokingly says the Board of Education will cover it.
So then who pays?
The Board of Education?
The students buy into her promise, but Emilio interrupts, reminding them that the Board of Education hasn't done anything for them. The mood quickly shifts, and as LouAnne tries to get them to read the poem, they lose interest and refuse to participate until the closing bell rings. The students hastily pack their bags and leave, but before Callie exits, she advises LouAnne to win Emilio over if she wants the class to listen. As she leaves the building with Hal, LouAnne shares her desire to teach the students poetry, and Hal agrees. She asks for suggestions on how to capture their attention and asks about his favorite poet. Hal mentions Dylan, and she assumes he means Dylan Thomas, not Bob Dylan. The following day, she assigns one of Bob Dylan's poems for analysis in class. During the discussion, she asks Emilio to participate, but he refuses to engage. Later, while out drinking with Hal, he mentions that Maggie would like LouAnne to come over for dinner, but LouAnne declines, citing a former member of their group who is no longer there. Hal acknowledges her feelings, but says he has moved on and encourages her to do the same. LouAnne shows her appreciation with a brief kiss on the cheek and suggests he tell Maggie she's lucky. Days later, at school, LouAnne has a brief chat with Hal before heading into the building. Inside, she spots Emilio getting ready to fight Raul and Gusmero, so she quickly steps in to break it up and sends the onlookers away. While speaking to Emilio, she advises him that he's stronger than the others and doesn't need to prove it. After warning them that fighting can get them expelled, they agree to back off and leave. But then Angela, Emilio's girlfriend, approaches LouAnne and warns that she made a mistake by interfering, since the boys are determined to fight no matter what. LouAnne asks where the fight might happen, but Angela refuses to say. Shortly after, a fight breaks out elsewhere in the school. Hal rushes in and helps break it up. The students involved are handcuffed and taken away in police vehicles. LouAnne hurries over to Raul and demands to know why he broke his promise. Raul explains that they felt they had to fight to protect their pride. This makes LouAnne realize that her earlier comment about Emilio being stronger may have made things worse. As the police take the boys away, she decides to talk to Emilio to understand why he got involved. He angrily reveals that he enjoys hitting people, stemming from his troubled home life. Although LouAnne offers to help him, he dismisses her words, questioning if she can keep him off the streets. Concerned, LouAnne later looks up the files for Gusmero and Raul and finds their home addresses. She visits Raul's house first, where his family greets her warmly. As they start discussing how to discipline him, LouAnne surprises them by defending Raul, saying he did nothing wrong and calling him one of her brightest students. His family is thrilled to hear this. She then visits Gusmero's house and does the same. The next day at school, LouAnne begins by reciting lines from a poem and invites volunteers to analyze it. The room falls silent. She asks why no one wants to speak up, and little by little, the students voice their frustrations, blaming her for Raul and Gusmero's suspensions.
Wasn't none of your business, Chismosa.
And you got Raul and Gusmero suspended.
LouAnne defends herself, insisting she didn't betray them, but the students resort to name-calling and adopt a dismissive attitude. Fed up, she tells them that if they truly feel that way, they're free to leave. Shocked by her words, they protest, claiming they don't have a choice. But LouAnne challenges this, making it clear that everyone has options. After a heated debate, Emilio finally asks her to read the lines again. This time, when she does, he offers his analysis, and Callie backs him up. The discussion sparks to life, and soon the whole class is actively contributing. By the end of the day, they've had a productive and engaging session. As the students file out, Emilio quietly praises LouAnne for visiting Raul and Gusmero. Weeks later, LouAnne keeps her promise and takes the class to the amusement park, where they enjoy the rides of their lives. When Principal Grande hears about it, he warns her that such actions could get her dismissed. LouAnne plays it safe, insisting it was just a coincidence that she happened to hang out with her students that day. Sensing more to the story, Grande asks if she rewarded them for poetry. She simply replies, "Poetry is its own reward." Later in class, LouAnne tells the students about a new restaurant in town and announces a contest. Whoever finds a Dylan Thomas poem that resembles one by Bob Dylan will win dinner at the restaurant. The students eagerly head to the library to research both poets and their works. Eventually, Darrell, Raul, and Callie's team find the answer and win the prize, while the other students are given small consolation rewards. After class, Callie tells LouAnne that she won't be able to make it to the dinner because of her part-time job. LouAnne takes her address and promises to bring the food to her. That evening, LouAnne meets Raul at the restaurant, and he's the only student who shows up, wearing a fancy leather jacket.
Fantastic.
Go ahead, touch it. It's real leather.
Sensing his nervousness and low self-esteem, LouAnne encourages him to place the order himself. Raul reluctantly agrees and speaks to the waiter, and soon they're served chicken. As they eat, Raul confesses that he needs to skip school to pay back the man he got the jacket from. Concerned about how he plans to get the money, LouAnne offers to lend it to him on one condition: he must repay her on the day he graduates. Raul hesitates, unsure if he'll make it that far, but LouAnne reassures him that he's the kind of person who would do whatever it takes to keep his word. After the meal, she drives him home, and when she asks him about his choice, he vows to graduate, and it makes her very happy. Before he leaves, she compliments his jacket, and he thanks her in return.
It is a very nice jacket.
Later, LouAnne stops by Callie's workplace to deliver the dinner she promised. While there, she encourages Callie to consider enrolling in advanced English. But Callie reveals she's planning to transfer to Clearview because she's pregnant. Shocked, LouAnne asks whose decision it was for her to leave, and Callie says it's the school's. Back in class, LouAnne notices that Darrell and Lionel are absent, but presses on with the lesson. She tells the students that learning is its own reward, like building strength through exercise. When Raul asks about the difficult poem they were assigned, Callie confidently breaks it down, impressing everyone. During the break, LouAnne approaches Carla to discuss Callie's situation, hoping to find a way for her to stay. When Carla brushes her off, LouAnne's fed up with her BS and threatens to write an open letter criticizing the school board's unfair policies. Carla initially dismisses her, thinking LouAnne is bluffing, but seeing her determination, Carla admits that the rule forcing pregnant students to leave isn't from the board. It was created by school leaders to suit their preferences. That evening, LouAnne visits Callie at home and tells her she has the choice to stay at Parkmount, but Callie says she's already decided to transfer. Outside, they have a heart-to-heart conversation where LouAnne opens up about her past, sharing that she was married, her ex-husband abused her, and she once had an abortion after one of his beatings.
We got divorced, and I had an abortion.
Days later, on his way to school, Emilio runs into Angela's violent ex, Shorty, who threatens to take him out. Meanwhile, LouAnne heads to Darrell and Lionel's neighborhood to check on them, only to be met by their trifling mother. The woman comes outside and tells LouAnne that she's pulled her sons out of school. LouAnne pleads with her, trying to explain the importance of their education, but the mother won't hear it, saying her boys have bills to pay and telling LouAnne to leave. Back in class, the weight of losing Darrell and Lionel hits LouAnne hard, and she struggles to hold herself together. After school, Angela rushes to her, terrified for Emilio's safety. She confesses that her ex, a crack addict, is determined to kill Emilio. LouAnne urges Emilio to go to the police, but he refuses, saying he plans to unalive Shorty before Shorty can get him. Desperate, LouAnne convinces him to come to her house to figure out a solution, with Angela's help. At home, LouAnne tries to get Emilio to open up about Shorty, but he stays tight-lipped. Changing tactics, she suggests Emilio report Shorty's drug use to Principal Grandy. That way, Shorty could be sent to juvenile detention, forced into detox, and might forget about Emilio by the time he's released. Emilio resists at first, not wanting to be a snitch, but LouAnne reminds him of when he once asked her how she would save his life, telling him that this is that moment. The next morning, LouAnne discovers that Emilio left during the night.
Emilio?
At school, she hurries to Grande's office, hoping Emilio followed through, but Grande coldly tells her that Emilio came by, but was sent away for not knocking before entering. LouAnne can barely contain her anger as she storms out of the office. In class, she sits in tense silence, praying that Emilio is safe. Moments later, Carla arrives with devastating news that Emilio has been shot and unalived just a few blocks away. After confirming that he is dead, LouAnne says she'll tell her students of his passing. Carla then asks her how she'll pass the news, and she sarcastically refers to Grande's knocking principle. LouAnne enters the classroom, her face heavy with sorrow. Without any preamble, she breaks the devastating news. Emilio is gone.
Is he dead?
Yes, he's dead.
The words hit the students hard. Shock and grief ripple through the room as the reality sinks in. Overcome with emotion, LouAnne breaks down, crying alongside her students. Their shared pain binds them in that moment of loss. As time passes, the school slowly settles back into its usual rhythm, but the shadow of Emilio's death lingers. One day, LouAnne gathers the class to tell them something important. She won't be continuing with them. The announcement stuns the students, and they immediately press her for answers. At first, she tries to dodge their questions, but they see through her. They realize it's not just about her, it's about all the heartbreak. Losing Emilio, seeing Callie leave, and Durrell and Lionel being pulled out. Raul, deeply hurt, speaks up and reminds her of the promise she made that he'd graduate. He asks bitterly if the rest of them don't matter anymore, and his words cut deep.
We've been working hard and we stayed in school, man. What about us?
The day before her final one at Parkmount, LouAnne packs up her things. Raul finds her and, with gratitude in his voice, thanks her for the loan, saying it was the kindest thing anyone's ever done for him. He offers to repay her, even if it means he won't graduate, convinced no other teacher will give him a fair shot at an A. But LouAnne reassures him. She tells him that keeping an A is far harder than earning it, but if he works for it, it's his. She reminds him that they've been tackling poetry at a college level, and encourages him to stay focused, as she hopes to see him at college someday. Later, as she walks out of the building with Hal, weighed down by guilt and sorrow, she admits how bad she feels about leaving. She asks him why he chooses to stay in a place that feels so hopeless. Hal simply smiles and says, "It's because he's crazy." The next day, LouAnne walks into her classroom and spots Callie nearby. She asks Callie if she's come to persuade her to stay, or if it's just because it's the last day. Callie replies it's for both reasons, her voice trembling with emotion as she expresses how much she wants LouAnne to remain with them. Her classmates chime in, offering their support. They reference a poem about not going gentle into that good night and raging against the dying of the light. But LouAnne firmly states that she has made her choice.
I have no reason to rage against the dawn.
To her surprise, the students explain that it's not about her decision. Rather, she's their light, and they're not going to give her up. One of them tosses her a candy bar, and soon they start chanting her name. They break into a dance, filled with cheers and laughter, and in that moment, LouAnne realizes she's changed her mind, and decides to continue teaching them. At the end of the semester, Hal asks her how they got her to come back, and she says her students gave her candy and called her the light. The end. Thank you for sticking to the end of my video. Please do me the biggest favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you next video.